Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by the amazing Cody Langille. Cody, how you doing today?
Doing great, thanks.
Hey, it is an honor to have you here. I'm very, very excited to talk about this with you. But before we actually talk about why you're here, Cody, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. Cody spent many a Saturday afternoon watching monster movies with her mom. It wasn't long before after that they started crafting nightmares to share with their readers. She is a retired disabled veteran. First and foremost, thank you for your service. Um, the fact that you and your family were willing to sacrifice, and I always say you and your family because I know that your family was just as much a part of it as you were when they were over here waiting for you to come home safely. So thank you for all the sacrifices you made. Where did you serve, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I did 20 years in the Air Force, and my wife is actually still serving. She's active Air Force as well. So,
Please tell her that everybody from Sledgehammer Horror says thank you for her service as well. Very, very important for us that we appreciate our veterans and all the sacrifices that you all have made. Now, serving did help give you a love for creepy tales. That prompted you to form Timber Ghost Press in January of 2021.
mhm.
And you are an affiliate member of Hollywood Writers Association, the DEI chair of the League of Utah Writers, and she received her MFA writing popular fiction from Seton Hill University in 2014. So, between being a veteran and all these other things, you have a lot of feathers in your cap. So, how do you find enough time to work everything out at one time?
Yeah, it's tough. Probably just with the support around me, right? I co-chair for the HWA, the Horror Writers Association, our chapter here, so I have help there, so that works out. With the League of Utah Writers thing, that's new. That happened this year, so I'm still kind of feeling out my role there and how I can best help. But I'm just excited to be part of that team. But yeah, as far as like running my press and trying to write and all that, it's just finding time here and there, trying to make a schedule, stick to it, and then just being aware that sometimes it doesn't work out, and you have to be okay with it.
Sure. I mean, just like everything else, acting, podcasting, writing, you're going to hear 99 no's for every yes you hear.
Yeah,
So, getting used to disappointment is something is part of the territory. So, we talk about you being a writer. Is there any place that people can read some of your writing?
for sure. Yeah. If you go to crlangille.com, that's my personal website. Then, of course, timberghostpress.com has access to some of my books through there as well. But yeah, I mean, that's the best place to follow me and
Okay.
find me. So,
Well, the best thing about this, guys, you don't have to go and look for any of that information because I have all of Cody's links right down in the description. Not only the websites, but I also have the social media links. So you can follow Cody, become a part of that family as well. Now, Cody, in order for you to write horror and be a part of the HWA in your area, horror had to start for you somewhere. So now I would like to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Cody, your first horror movie was.
yeah. So, when you asked me that earlier, it was really hard for me to like figure that out because I started watching horror movies very young, probably too young. So I really don't remember what my first horror movie was, but there is a particular scene in a movie that's not even horror that scared the bejesus out of me. And I had a pretty visceral response at one point to it. But that was the Large Marge scene in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. When she like did that claymation transformation, it scared the snot out of me as a kid to the point where in our old apartment, our bathtub was next to the washer dryer. And I remember taking a bath one time and like seeing her peek her head out from behind that and like do that crazy, like just scared the snot out of me.
I will say, and people that have repeat viewers, you know what I'm about to say. I've always said the only perfect movie ever made is Pee Wee's Big Adventure. I think that movie is absolutely 100% perfect. I adore that movie. And something I've often said too is horror is the hardest genre to lock down. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
makes a horror movie is the hardest thing to say, this is it. And one of the things I say is people are like, well, it has to be scary. And I say, well, the scene that probably scared me the most in my whole life wasn't even in a horror movie, and it was the Large March scene in Pee Wee's Big Adventure. Because when we're watching that as kids, you get to that, you're not expecting any type of fear or scariness. And when she does she looked like this,
Yes, yeah, yeah.
and you're just as a kid, it scares the shit out of you in that moment because that's the last thing you were expecting to
Mm-hmm.
happen. So,
It's
like I
almost
said,
like
much
your
respect to you.
first jump scare almost.
Mm-hmm. And then you get,
So yeah.
Pee Wee doing his reaction, and then he goes to
Hmm.
the bar, the diner. Large Marge sent me. And then you see her picture on the wall, like such
Right?
an
Yeah.
amazing, amazing moment. So,
But
um,
like, no, it was pretty crazy though. And I remember one time we were leaving my grandparents' house and my mom was driving and she starts to reenact that scene as we're driving. And she starts to do it was on a night, just like tonight. I'm like, Mom, don't do it. Like, stop. Mom, stop. And she just keeps going. And I'm like getting more and more like emotional. I'm like, stop, you gotta stop. And then she turns towards me and goes, blah. And I freaked out. I was maybe 6 at the time.
yeah,
I just started wailing on her. Like I was in the passenger seat. I just turned at her and just started like throwing hands. Like she had to
that's
pull over to the side of the road and calm me down because I had such a crazy response to just her doing that. That's how
like,
much
Mom,
that,
you brought this on. You did it.
yeah. She told me later, like, yeah, I had bruises all over my arm. I'm like, well, I told you to stop.
Right, right. This is completely on you. So, we know that the Large Marge scene was the one that really affected you, which again, I agree because I grew up
Mhm.
around the same time you did, and that was really a scene that affected me a lot. And like I said, Pee Wee's Big Adventure, I still watch probably 4 or 5 times a year.
Yeah.
I think it's the perfect movie. The only movie I think that I enjoy a little more than that, which neither one of these are horror movies, but Back to the Future, I think is probably the best movie ever
Mhm.
made.
That's a good
But
one.
Pee Wee is it's such a perfect movie. I mean, everything from Francis being the ultimate villain, um, the scene
Yep.
of the doctor clowns when they got the bike, like
Hmm.
everything about Pee Wee's Big Adventure is just so good. Quote, I'm a loner, Dottie, a rebel. Such a quotable movie. I think it's so perfect. And rest in peace, Paul Rubens. Usually when people
Yeah.
talk about these scenes, I go in and then I go right back to the first horror movie. But losing such an icon this year, I felt it was really,
Yeah.
really awesome. Or at the time of recording this year, when you guys were watching last year, it was really, really important to really put some emphasis on Paul Rubens and how amazing he was, and he made a perfect movie. So,
Yeah. I don't know
um,
how many times I tell people, oh, it's in the basement of the Alamo, you know?
in the basement of the Alamo, there's no basement in the Alamo. So the movie's perfect. It's perfect.
Good one.
So we know that Large Marge is what really got your blood flowing for the
Yeah.
first time.
Hmm. Hmm.
But Cody, what would you say the first actual horror movie that you watched was?
Probably Poltergeist. That's the one I can remember pretty clearly, watching and having a pretty decent horror reaction to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was something about that movie because, again, I probably watched it a little too young. Um, I've rewatched it since. I'm like, oh, this isn't that scary. But at the time, pretty scary, especially like that scene where the kid's in his bedroom and that clown doll is there. And I'm pretty sure there's a ton of other people that have the same like most horrible, horrifying scene out of that movie. Probably that. I mean, there's a lot of good ones out of that show, I think, but that
Well,
one in
and
particular.
another thing we always forget, especially nowadays, that movie was PG.
Yeah.
Like I caught that for the first time on like Fox 36 at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because it was just a PG
Mhm.
movie. I'll
Yeah.
never forget that and Tourist Trap were two movies that absolutely
Yeah.
terrified me as kids. And they were, they're not terrifying movies by any stretch, but they are scary enough. And when you're watching them as a little kid, they're
Yeah.
absolutely mind blowing how scary they are. So, do you remember who you were with when you had watched Poltergeist for the first time?
I think I was by myself. So that
Oh,
added
even
to it
better.
too, right? Like I'm sitting there by myself just watching this show, and about halfway through, I'm realizing like maybe I shouldn't be watching this.
When you could relate to Carol Ann because you're young at the
Mhm.
moment.
Yeah.
Our protagonist is another young lady, and we're watching what she's going through, trying to, and she's just the cutest little girl ever.
Yeah.
So, we're watching this movie through the scope of adults now, but as a kid, what would you say the scene was that affected you the most?
But like I said, probably the one with that doll in the bedroom was pretty scary. Um, and then the other one outside of that were probably when the tree like comes crashing through and grabs the kid, and now the kid's in the tree or whatnot, if I'm remembering this correctly.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yes,
Because then I'm walking around looking at trees like, is that thing going to come alive and snatch me? Like
right.
before
And
that, I wasn't
Poltergeist had
scared
a
of
really
trees.
good way of making these things that we, everyday things really scary, because we got to remember this
Yeah.
is pre Pennywise, pre It.
Yeah.
And they have that clown scare. They have the tree that comes in
Hmm.
scare. The bedroom where everything is spinning around inside the
Yeah.
bedroom. You got the records and all that stuff. That's all just spinning inside the bedroom. Well, it may not hold up as well looking today, that wonky
Sure.
CGI,
Yeah.
but as kids, that was scary. This is all stuff we're used to. The
Hmm.
TV. So we
Yeah.
all as kids we loved watching television, and the TV is evil. So Poltergeist had a way of making these friendly, amazing things in our lives, trees, television, our own bedrooms, terrifying. So
Yeah.
we know which scene affected you the most. But did you have a favorite scene from Poltergeist?
I'm trying to think back, like, um, as far as like favorite scenes go, and again, I might be mixing movies up again, but isn't there a scene in there where like uh it's raining really hard and the mom goes out and falls into a big puddle of water and then like the skeletons start popping up like in
The
there?
swimming pool.
Yeah. I thought that was a really awesome kind of scene at the time,
Which
one
has
that sticks
created a
out.
lot of controversy now because
Sure.
people, the real skeletons in the pool, but all those old movies used real skeletons. It was cheaper. That's just how it
Sure.
was.
Yeah.
Um, so Poltergeist is originally a trilogy. You had the
Mhm.
first three with Heather O'Rourke's young Carol Ann, and then you had
Yeah.
the newest remake from 2015. Now, when I talk about franchises, I always ask: Is the original is that your favorite in the franchise? And if not, which one is?
I think my favorite one is probably three, Poltergeist 3, when they're in that kind of high-rise building, And I remember distinctly the scene of the hands coming up out of a puddle of water, and like grabbing someone. Uh, that
Grabbing
one, I
Carol Ann.
yeah, and I remember even watching as a younger age, like a making of, and they showed how they did that and stuff, and I just
Uh-huh.
was so like fascinated about how that whole thing came together. But yeah, I think 3 is probably my favorite. I don't remember a whole lot about 3, but I remember like just the feeling
Mhm.
of 3 like sticking with me more than 1. Although I do like
It-
1.
right. See, it's funny because mine go from least favorite to favorite. 2015, 1, 2, 3. 3 is
Yeah.
absolutely my favorite as well. We do another segment on this podcast called In Defense of, where we defend movies that people, a lot of people don't like. We have a guest come
Yeah.
on and defend movies. And I always said I would never defend a movie because it's our show, but people wanted to see me defend a movie, and it was Poltergeist 3. I think it's terrifying. I love the high rise. I love
Mhm.
so many things about that movie. I think Uncle Bruce is great in his relationship with Carol Ann.
Yeah.
There's just so much about that movie that I think is just so good. So I couldn't agree more with you on that one.
And
Um,
I really wanted to like the 2015 one. Like when it was coming out as a remake, I'm like, oh great, this might be awesome. Went and saw it, and I was just like, oh, it's okay.
One thing I do love, and it gives it just automatic points, is when they went into the writers' room. They said, "Listen, Heather O'Rourke," because me and Ashley we did our versus episode on this, and we did a lot of behind the scenes digging. And when
Mhm.
they went into the writers' room, they're like, "Listen, Heather O'Rourke was Carol Ann. We're not going to have another Carol Ann." So when they recasted this movie, they purposely got a girl with brown hair and brown eyes, and they named her Maddie instead of Carol Ann as the ultimate respect to Heather O'Rourke. And I think that's the
Mhm.
ultimate way to honor her memory.
For
They're
sure.
remaking the movie. They get a girl that's the polar opposite of who Heather was. They give her a completely different name. So you know what? Even though we're remaking this film, Heather was Carol Ann, and we're not going to take that away from her. This young girl died because of a medical misdiagnosis. At the age of 12, we're not going to
Mhm.
take anything away from who she was. We're not going to take this legacy away from her. That movie points right there, and then you watch it and you're like, it's just forgettable. Nothing
Yeah,
stands out about it. Not great, not terrible, just forgettable.
it's okay.
Um, that's how I feel. It's just it exists. Um, so Cody, we talked about your first horror movie being Poltergeist. We talked about your first jump scare being Large Marge, which God I'm in love with. But now I want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you here for a second.
Sure, yeah.
Um, my little buddy Ghostface is here, and
Okay.
he has a question for you.
Yeah.
What's your favorite scary movie, Cody? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Man, favorite horror movie of all time. That is a very tough question, because I've watched so many of them and I like so many of them. So I'm gonna just throw one out that like jumped in my head first, right? Hereditary. I really liked Hereditary a lot. I thought the whole atmosphere and tone of the show was amazing. I thought the acting was amazing.
Tony
That
Collette was
scene
snob.
with the
Like,
telephone
dude,
pole, oh my gosh, like horrifying, and then just her reaction, and you don't even see it, you just hear it.
hear
Like
it.
when she goes outside, then you hear her just scream this gut wrenching, like horrifying scream. She's seen what just, the aftermath of all that. And you can just imagine, like, as a parent, how horrifying that would be to go out there and see that. And then just the fallout of all of that. Like, just emotionally, like, that movie is gut wrenching. And then,
Oh,
like, the creepy factor of it, when you start like adding the rest of it in, like, I think it's great. Some people don't like it. I like it. So,
and that's the thing about horror that makes it so much fun. We can each have the exact same viewing experience and take two different things away from it. Um, Toni Collette in anything she's in, especially horror, the minute I see her, I'm like, oh, she's going to steal the show. She's the best. Whether it was the Fright Night remake,
mhm.
Krampus, Hereditary, The Sixth Sense, like
Yeah.
she's just such an amazing horror mom, and I think that everything she does is just like I'm obsessed. I think she's tops for me. Toni Collette is just one of the absolute greatest of all time, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So,
She's amazing.
um, she is. She's god awful. Speaking of amazing people, Cody, don't forget to follow them on social media because I have all of their links down in the description as well as the website, so you can keep in contact with everything they're doing and read some of their writings as well. Now, before I let you go, Cody, I do always bounce back to the same question.
Yeah.
We're going to go back to Poltergeist,
Hmm.
and what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, Cody, we're
Okay.
not ranking Poltergeist on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All
Hmm.
we're doing here is ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So, zero skulls being not effective, five being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Cody, what would your ranking of Poltergeist be?
I think I'll give it 4.5 skulls. Because I think it really set me down that path of like
Right,
loving horror, right? Like, if we were to talk about it as a movie itself, yeah, it's a different rating. But if we're
right.
talking about how it affected me, as who I am today and what I do, definitely it was one of those. I don't want to call it inspirational, but like, what's the word I'm thinking of?
A
Influential.
gateway. Yeah,
Yeah.
influential
It.
gateway. Definitely got
Mhm.
you started in what you wanted to do.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Definitely got me like hooked at a young age to
Mhm.
horror. So
And the thing is, like you talk about how important these movies are, and we always think about how important these movies are to us, and how many other movies wouldn't exist without Poltergeist. Like
mhm.
how many of us wouldn't be where we are today if Poltergeist hadn't came out? And like we talked a little bit about the 2015 remake, but there are talks about another Poltergeist coming out. I don't know if it's going to be a movie form. I know that the rights were just sold, so I don't know if it's going to be a film or if it's going to be a TV show. But is that something that you would like to see? Is them try to expand this Poltergeist universe with maybe a new, unique story?
Yeah, I think it would be cool, especially if it was a TV show. I think TV series um, have a chance to slow things down and really take their time with building up characters, building up the world and the story, and like really getting into it. I think a great example of that was, did you ever watch the Exorcist TV series?
Loved it. So
Oh,
underrated.
oh man, amazing. I was so sad when it got canceled because that was some excellent storytelling. Um,
There's a lot of those. The Purge had a good TV series that got canceled too early. The Mist had a really good TV series that got
yeah,
canceled after a season. And then you look at like the new Chucky TV series. I think the new Chucky TV series is a great example of what you can do when you take a film and you make it into a TV series, and you can really build on characters and
for
get the
sure. Yeah.
pacing the way that it should be.
So yeah, if it came out as like a TV series, that I'd be all over it. I'd give it a whirl for sure. If it comes out as a movie, I'll see it too, just because. But my hopes won't be as high, But
No, I get it. Um, So, like I said, guys, I know I said it at the beginning, but we're at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. And when me and Cody were able to make this happen, I was really excited for the fact that she actually gave me this opportunity to bring them on and be able to have this conversation about horror. Because when I see somebody that is an artist that's creating that art, I want to learn how that started for them. And the best way that you can do that, like I said a couple times, are by clicking the links down in the description. So make sure you are doing that. Cody, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you.
sure.
Um, Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are down in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.